Okay, so today I'm going to be showing you how to shade with a pen using the hatching technique. So we're going to be shading this pumpkin and provided both these pumpkin images on Google Classroom. Yours is blank. I just wanted to go ahead and show you a section so we could talk about it real quick. So hatching is where you draw lines going in the same direction. They don't intentionally crisscross, but sometimes they crisscross when you are trying to layer your lines to create a darker shadow. So it's always nice to have like a stack of papers. This works for some people and not for others, but to have a stack of papers underneath your drawing because it can be easier to press down and create more wispy lines. So the lines I'm creating, I'm pressing down real hard where I want my darker area to be, and then as I move out, I create more, I just pull up on my pen so that it's more of a wispy line, just like that. And so my lines should follow the direction of whatever it is I'm shading. In this case, it's a pumpkin. So my lines should really follow the direction of this curve. That's also called directional shading. So just like this, they curve on the outside to follow this main line right here of the section of the pumpkin I am working on. And then in the middle, they can just kind of go up and then curve on the other side as I kind of move towards the left side of the pumpkin. Over here though, all my lines are going to be pretty much curved. There's not going to be any that go straight up and down. So they're going to curve like this, and it's going to take some practice just getting the hang of how it feels to draw these sorts of lines, these real wispy lines. Wispy meaning kind of tapered and thin on one end, almost like little wispy hairs, baby hairs almost. Okay, so at the bottom I'm going to layer my lines to create a darker shadow. Some of my lines may be longer, some of them will be shorter, but you actually want to have a different lengths to help make it blend and to also make it look more realistic. If you just have all the lines the exact same length, it's going to look too uniform and too all your shadows would end up stopping in the same place if all your lines were the same length. So you want to make it look more natural. Oops. Okay. So, and if you put some lines in the wrong place, you can always blend it out. I encourage you to go watch other tutorials by other artists on how to shade with a pen, because sometimes it's good to learn from multiple people. So they may have different techniques that work better for you. And certain pen shading techniques might not work out for you. The next one we'll learn about is cross hatching, and you might like that one better, or you may not. It's just what works. You'll find what works best for your style of drawing. But the thing to keep in mind is to create a full range of value in your drawing. So a value scale, this is an example of a value scale right here, ranges from 1 to 10, 1 being your lightest area, 10 being your darkest. In order to give the drawing the potential of looking very realistic, you want to have the full range of value in there. So that means we're going to have the number 10 value all the way around the stem and also at the bottom. And then we're going to have some 5s and 3s and 6s along the edges here. And then in the middle, it's going to be 1s and 2s to create your lighter areas. Your darker areas are called shadows. Your lighter areas are called highlights. And you want all of those things in your drawing to really make it look realistic. Now, almost done with the pumpkin, and then I'll show you how to do the stem. Sometimes it's easier to make curves to the left or to the right, so sometimes I'll turn it upside down, and that makes it easier to draw your lines for some people. What works for some doesn't work for everyone. Okay, so now let's go in to use that directional shading. These lines aren't necessarily hatching. Hatching are more long and short lines that are more wispy and can show, you can layer and create shadow. This one's more just a style of mark making where the lines kind of show the texture of the stem. If you've ever seen an actual pumpkin, they have a lot of texture on the stem. They kind of have these grooves in the stem of the pumpkin. So if you hold your picture away from you and it looks like your details are blending in, like your stem might be blending into the lines that you had on the top of your pumpkin, that means that you need to create more contrast by darkening your darker areas. So if I darken all these areas behind the stem, just like this, what happens is it creates more contrast and it visually pushes the stem forward so that it shows up from further away. And if any of your sections blend in, that means that you can go in and darken your main lines to show the different sections. Mine turned out a little bit darker than my first one that we're using as an example, but that's okay. Okay, so I'm trying to think if there's anything else to go over. Always have your full range of value. Ones happen to be in the middle here to help make the pumpkin look more round. Use directional shading where the lines curve in this instance. If you were shading, for instance, a short-haired dog, you would want to use a lot of short lines that go in the direction of the fur. Our lines for the pumpkin are longer and wispier like this, whereas a short-haired animal would be more like this. And so use directional shading, create contrast where your details are so your details show up, and don't be afraid to go dark. I always have kids who are real nervous to go dark. Sometimes just practicing your lines off to the side will help you before you actually jump onto the actual drawing. Okay? All right, I'm sure it turned out great.